What's up guys? How are you doing? I hope you enjoyed this short intro sequence and also the drone shots. I think especially the drone shots when the sun was rising and there was all of the fog above the forest. They were just super epic. But today we're not going to talk about drone shots as in many of my other videos, but today we're going to talk about POV. I wanted to show you a small little setup that I found for myself which works perfectly for me and also has some benefits over bigger POV setups. But before we go into detail about that setup, let's talk a little bit about POV in general. So POV is an abbreviation for point of view. So basically you try to make the viewer feel like the character himself, as the perspective is the same as your own eyes. You kind of just see what your hands are doing, also maybe what your legs are doing, just in general. It's just a first person view. And I think it has a super cool look, and on top of that, also with POV footage you can tell a story in a very creative, in a very authentic and in a very raw way. There are complete action movies like Hardcore Henry, which are shot completely in the POV view, or also the music video of False Alarm by The Weeknd, where you as the viewer kind of experience a bank robbery out of the first person view. Looks pretty cool, right? But to pull off these shots, you need a very complicated and big setup, which is most of the time operated by multiple people. At first sight, those setups look kind of cool, but it's definitely something you wouldn't want to use in everyday situations. Because the main downside of these huge setups is that you need a lot of time to rig them perfectly, and also you need a lot of people to operate them because you need to take care of many different settings like the aperture, the focus, maybe also the ISO. And on top of that, they're also super fucking expensive. But I'm happy to tell you that there is also a budget version which actually has some advantages over those bigger setups. If you already watched my video on how to find epic spots without any people, you probably already saw my intro where I make my way from my apartment to the airport and fly to Mallorca. For everybody who didn't watch it yet, you can check it out here. All of the shots were captured on the setup of just a GoPro Max and a simple bite mount on it. For everybody who doesn't know, a bite mount, it's basically just a piece of plastic with some silicone around it so that you can just comfortably bite on it. That's where bite mount comes from, right? You can find the link to the 360 camera and the mount both in the description as always. Yeah, this setup is up and running in less than a few seconds because you just have to click on record and you just stick it into your mouth and you're ready to go. Done. Obviously, you look like a freaking weirdo if you go to the supermarket and buy your Coke with a camera in your mouth and you try to speak and nobody can understand you. And also if you go on an airplane and people look weirdly at you. What the fuck? But I wouldn't say that it looks even weirder than a head mount. Like all these people running around with head mounts and a GoPro on top, I think they're even less cool than guys with a bite mount. But either way, you get used to all the people staring after a couple of minutes and you just go with the flow. And on top of that, it's always good to get out of your comfort zone, right? Now I'm going to tell you all of the benefits of this small setup. And yeah, I'm also going to show you what exactly you need to take care of in order to get the perfect shot. When you film in 360, you basically capture everything that's happening around the 360 camera, and then you can reframe it in post. GoPro has actually a pretty cool Premiere Pro plugin called GoPro FX Reframe, where you can adjust the field of view to your liking. You can adjust the pan, the tilt, the rotation, the lens curve and the zoom. So it's a lot of things that you can adjust in there. This is actually a huge advantage because when filming you don't really have to worry if your camera is facing the exact same way and if everything is visible in the shot because you can adjust it afterwards in the program. Abe Kislevitz actually made a very good tutorial about this plugin where he explains every single detail about it. So if you want to know how this works, check it out in the description. Capturing in 360 is 100% worth it because you get the widest angle possible, and that's something you can't really get with any lens on a normal camera because 360 is just the widest you can get. Yeah, that helps to sell the overall POV experience to the viewer because at some point in the intro you also saw that you could see my legs or also my complete arms, which yeah, makes the viewer feel even more like he's in the character himself. Another benefit of this setup is that you don't have to take care of the stabilization, the focus, or the right exposure. Let's start with the stabilization. Actually, your head is already doing most of the work when it comes to stabilizing the camera. It's just normal for us to keep our head as steady as possible because our body wants to keep our brain safe from any disruptions. I mean, who likes it if your head shakes? Okay, I take it back. Besides your own little in-body stabilization, you don't really need any other camera stabilization because we film in such a wide angle. In some very extreme situations, like when you're riding on a bike down a hill where there are a lot of bumps and your head and your camera shakes all the time, it can make sense to switch to the hero mode on the GoPro Max. So basically you just tap on the left bottom corner and you activate the hero mode, which actually turns your GoPro Max into more sort of a normal GoPro. So basically just one side is capturing, and the benefit of this is that you have the hyper smooth stabilization active. I made a small side-by-side comparison between the 360 mode and the hero mode in Super View, which is the widest view available in this mode. I was just running down the mountain to have a more shaky camera movement and to test this out, and I think that there's a pretty big difference between those two modes. You see immediately that the field of view in the 360 mode is much wider and you can see both my body and the whole mountain range, while in the hero mode you're only able to see a bit of my legs and mostly the trail. In my opinion, there's almost no difference in the stabilization of both clips, even though the 360 mode has no hypersmooth stabilization. I myself would always prefer to film in the 360 mode because I just love this super wide view, and also the stabilization isn't much worse, or there is not really a need for stabilization. So yeah, most of the time you will be fine with the 360 mode and you don't really need that hyper smooth in-body stabilization that the GoPro 8 normally has. Regarding the focus, all of these action cameras have an extremely high depth of field, so the majority of the video is going to be sharp. Obviously, a shallow depth of field has a nicer look to it, but with these bigger setups you always need another person to pull the focus for you, because you can't really rob a bank while pulling your own focus, or can you? The GoPro also automatically adjusts the exposure by either cranking up the shutter speed or increasing the ISO. If you film POV in the 360 mode, make sure to lock the exposure to the front camera by touching and holding on the screen and then pressing on the check mark in the bottom right corner. If you don't do this, most likely your video is going to be overexposed because the camera facing towards your body sees the darker side and therefore cranks up the ISO for both cameras, so just lock it to the front camera. The downside of this auto exposure is that you don't really get any motion blur in your video if you film in bright environments, because the GoPro is going to increase your shutter speed. And unfortunately you can't really use ND filters on a 360 cam because it would cause issues for the software to stitch both cameras together. So the only way to get this motion blur is to add it in post by applying the pixel motion blur effect in After Effects. So all in all, with the super quick to use bite mount, the adjustable field of view, the high depth of field and the auto exposure, you have a complete freedom of mind while filming because you don't have to take care of any of those things. I think that this is the main benefit over bigger setups because it allows you to have your camera running in just a couple of seconds, and also while filming you can just concentrate on what's happening in front of the camera. And I think this is super essential because when you film POV, you're both the camera operator and the actor yourself if you film on a budget. And as with this setup, I don't have to wear any head straps or chest mounts or just helmets, but just stick the thing in my mouth. I'm super quick and flexible while shooting. Especially if you shoot a lot on the go like I do, this is so important because you can just stick the camera in your mouth, hit record, and you immediately capture what you see. I mean, that's the reason why I'm able to capture these very authentic and raw moments, like for example when the stewardess gives me a paper or when the dogs at my dad's house welcome me back home. I mean, those are shots that I wouldn't get if the setup would take a couple of more seconds to get up and running. And I think that those shots make a POV experience actually really special. So that's why the flexibility and the freedom of mind is the main benefit to me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you learned something new about POV filmmaking. I myself want to use POV shots a lot more in my B-roll sequences for the upcoming videos because I just kind of like the look of it, and I also feel like I'm taking you guys right with me. I'm curious what you guys think about it, so let me know in the comments what you think about this setup and also what you think about POV in general. Also, I want to thank a company called Freewell for sending out their set of variable and D filters. One is actually on the camera right now and one is in here. They have this cool magnetic cases and yeah, they work really good. I've been testing them out throughout the last videos. Maybe you already recognized that I didn't have this ugly vignette at the border of the frame. Overall, I really like those filters and I just wanted to recommend them to anyone who's looking for good filters at the moment. You can find a link to them in the description. And also, if you think about picking up this setup, you can also find a link to the GoPro Max and the bite mount, as I already mentioned, in the description below. If you haven't subscribed to this channel already, feel free to do so, because in the upcoming weeks I'm going to publish some really cool videos. And yeah, I think that's everything for today. I hope all of you guys have a great day and I'm going to see you in the next one.